In 1963, February, I came back to the United States, and I was looking for a job because I had no job, and I interviewed in 5 cities, in Boston, Philadelphia, New Haven, Baltimore, and Washington. And the best job was in Washington, and I was hired by Marcoux O'Leary. George Marcoux founded the firm, and he was a friend of Stan Sherman, who was my professor, who influenced me greatly at the University of Michigan. And Stan was now, at that time, was at the architect for the Redevelopment Land Authority, RLA, in Washington. And he suggested that I go talk to George Marcoux, that he might have a job for me. So I did, and I was hired, and I stayed there for about 13 years. I became a partner in that firm after only a year, and we sold to Westinghouse in 1970, about 6 years later, which was fabulous because it gave me the money to start another business. So that's how I started another business, and never dreaming that it would be a success like it is. In the meantime, in 1964, at the same time as starting to work for Marcoux O'Leary, I met Wolfgang Oehme. My professor, Bijhouwer, in the Netherlands, told me to look up Wolfgang Oehme if I got near Baltimore. And of course, I settled very close to Baltimore. So I called up Wolfgang, and we agreed to meet, and he would show me some gardens he was doing. And in Baltimore, he worked almost exclusively in Baltimore. And so I went over to Baltimore, and we had a wonderful day of looking at gardens. And I saw how he was just scribbling plans on any old piece of paper and going out, loading up his car, a squareback VW with plants, and putting them in the ground in a very artistic way. I couldn't believe it. And I remember that Pauline Vollmer, who has one of his great early gardens, said she never saw a worse plan. She didn't recognize any of the plants, and she said, I can't believe I trusted him. I don't know what it was that made me trust him, because of course we put in the garden, and it was a huge success. It's been published endlessly, and it's beautiful today. She's in her 90s and still keeping the garden going. So that was one garden we looked at. I remember we had a very nice lunch. Then we went to see other gardens, the Adler Garden, and Shirley Rice's garden, and so on. Gardens I became very familiar with over time. And I just put a seed in the back of my head that maybe Wolfgang and I could work together someday, because I really wasn't satisfied with city planning and urban design. City planning and urban design are a political process. If you ever see anything done, it's rare and takes forever. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a squareback VW and load it up with plants and go out and actually plant them? And like my father, then at the end of the day, I could look at the job and realize that I had really accomplished something during that day. So I continued until 1972. In 1971, I bought my house in Georgetown, and I asked Wolfgang to do the garden with me. And that garden became quite famous very quickly. It was published right away. And nobody had ever seen a garden that looked quite like it. One of our principles was to use big plants and little gardens. Not pretty, but very dramatic. And so the garden was really dramatic and very interesting, and I did a lot of entertaining. Landscape architecture is a very social profession, and you've got to entertain all the time. I had parties after concerts, I had parties after art openings, and people came to my house. They were stunned. They found the garden absolutely stunning. The minute I announced that I was going to practice landscape architecture, that was in 1975, I had 5 clients right away, because everybody was ready to have a garden like mine. And we had 5 gardens in Washington, and that's how it started. So we formed a partnership first, and then incorporated in '77.